Hello and hi, everybody. My name is Chandler Poling with White Bear PR, and I am proudly one of the co-founders of the Alliance for Women Film Composers. I can't imagine co-founding this with Lolita, Miriam, and Laura back in 2014, and what it's grown to now has been incredible. And so I'm really happy to be here to moderate this panel titled Paving Your Own Way, Unconventional Paths to Exceptional Careers. So some housekeeping before we get to the panel and introduce our amazing composers. I just have a few announcements I want to go through. We have some very, very fun events happening at the Alliance. Tomorrow, on Friday, we have our Music on Film social mixer with Film Fatales. On Tuesday, June 1st, our Women Composers of Netflix panel is happening. So it's in collaboration with Netflix. We are very excited to be working with them. So please go ahead and RSVP with the Eventbrite link. If you don't have that, let us know. June 5th and 6th, the Alliance will collaborate on several amazing and inspiring workshops with Perspective Forum and the Film Music House. So stay tuned for that. On June 12th, we have our annual Tribeca Brunch. This is presented with White Bear PR, the SCL, Spitfire Audio, and Found Objects Music Production. This will be a virtual brunch, so you can tune in from anywhere and connect with the composers of the Tribeca Film Festival. Please check out our Facebook page and newsletter for all upcoming events. So with that out of the way, I want to give a little bit of instructions for those of you watching. If you have any questions for our panelists, we'd love to hear from you. We have a chat that you can always put a question in. However, there is a Q&A prompt. So if you see down in the lower part of your Zoom, you'll see things like chat and raise hand and whatever, but there's a Q&A button. If you tap that, there will be a place where you can put in questions, and I will see them prompt up on my screen, and I can address those questions during the panel if you have anything that isn't addressed, or if you just want to ask any of these amazing composers a question. With all of that out of the way, now let's get to what we're all here for. We're here to talk to these incredible composers, and I'm going to start by bringing on Nainita Desai, composer of American Murder.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Chandler. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
So great to see you, Nainita. Thank you so much for being here. Next, let's please bring on the recording artist and composer, Drum and Lace, composer of Dickinson.
Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. Nice to see you, Chandler.
Hi, great to see you too. Please let's welcome the incredible Amanda Jones, composer of Good Trouble and the Black Lady Sketch Show.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's nice to see you.
Great to see you, Amanda. And last but not least, we have the amazing Raphael Thibault, composer of Secrets of the Whales.
Hi, Chandler. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here.
Wow, this is an amazing group. So thank you so much for all agreeing to do this, because you all have an incredible backstory that have led you to where you are now. And I am very excited to dive in and chat. Before we get there, let's hear from each of you just a little small introduction about who you are, kind of a little bit about your background, so that people have an idea of who they're about to hear from. So let's start with Amanda Jones.
Okay, hi. Let's see. So a bit about me, I guess, I studied music composition, went to Vassar College, graduated in 2010, moved to LA, did the band thing for a bit, kind of just like a 10-year stretch of just grinding the gears, and then, made certain steps too, which I'm sure we'll talk about, to kind of transition into the composer space. But it's been an incredible journey, and I'm so excited to share all about it.
Amazing. Sophia, so Drum and Lace, aka Sophia Hultquist. We're going to casually call her Sophia on this panel. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I set out originally to study film scoring when I came over to the US at 18. And at the time, I wasn't ready to embark on the journey to LA and kind of like diving into that. So took a bit of a detour, studied music technology, like 3D and acoustics, 3D audio and acoustics, and then played in bands, and then worked as an in-house composer, and then started performing. So it's been kind of like a hodgepodge of things, and then finally kind of came back to doing scoring. And now it's been kind of like the scoring is my wonderfully my day job, and then my artist project allows me to be able to perform and to release music and do all of these things. And I'm also in LA.
Wonderful. Nainita, let's hear from you.
Hi. So yes, I'm London-based, born and brought up in London, UK, and I have a degree in mathematics. But music was my passion and hobby as I was growing up as a teenager and as a child. So I guess I'm self-taught on various instruments, learn a lot of instruments all around the world. And then I got a scholarship to go to the National Film and Television School, and I studied sound, not music. So I became a sound designer on feature films. And then from that, I transitioned to becoming a freelance music engineer before the long and torturous journey of finally landing up where my heart's desire was to be a film and TV composer. So, and that's what I've been doing ever since for the last 20 odd years, I guess.
Wonderful. And Raphael?
Hey, I'm Raphael, originally from France, where I grew up, and I studied music, started the piano when I was 3 or 4 years old. Had a very long classical training until I was 18, when I took a little detour and I ended up in advertising and tech for a good 10 years until I realized that, it was time for me to go back to my first love, music. So I've been a full-time composer after I quit my job at Google 6 years ago.
And well, let's get into the topic at hand. So we're talking about paving your own way. And so I want to discuss the unique kind of past careers that you've each had, and then the pivotal moments that you've decided to writing music to picture was, essential for you. And Raphael, I just want to start with you because you mentioned Google. So you're on this tech path, you're working for Google. What was the alarm that went off in your head? You're like, no, I just need to stop this and pivot and do something different.
Well, it was always kind of around because I've lived in many places, and I've always had my 88 keyboard with me the whole time. Even when I didn't have a home, I would have my piano with me all the time with my backpack. So it was always with me. It never really left me. It's just that I think it took me a while to realize that I could be a film composer. I was obsessed with film scoring since I was maybe 7, 8, grabbing a recorder and bringing it to the theaters and recording the music in the movie. So it was with me the whole time. It's just that I didn't realize, is it because, I'm a woman and I saw so many composers being male, when I was a kid, and maybe it was hard for me to project myself as a composer. I'm not sure, but I ended up leaving. I was kicked out of music school when I was 17 because I've been told that if I didn't want to play the piano and perform, it was not for me. Music was not for me. And I didn't really like this, this aspect of music, just performing, being a, soloist. That's not what I wanted to do. I mean, I love performing, but that's not what I wanted to do. And deep down I knew it, but I couldn't, I didn't know that there was other ways, I didn't realize it at least. So after music school, I ended up, going back to normal school, going to college, studying history and communications. And that's how I ended up in advertising for a few years, where I actually used also, I also worked with music supervisors. And I remember feeling that I was completely out of place and I wanted to work with them, the whole time, and not not with my client account. So that was very interesting. And then I got hired by Google, which was, amazing because it's a very comfortable position to be in. Work at Google with, a crowd of talented people traveling the world, a good, like a lot of comfort also financially and stuff. So that was very comfortable. And I got invited to an event organized by Google, like the Polisi team at the Abbey Road studio when I was living in London in 2015. And they were doing some sort of demo of what it's like to record music for a movie. And I remember them showing us mock-ups of Fury, the score to Fury by Stephen Sprice. And I remembered being like completely, I don't know, I felt so dazed by it, so sad at the same time, because it felt that this would make sense, so much sense to me. And 2 weeks after, I quit my job at Google, and that's how it started.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you got that awakening, because you're a welcome voice into the composing world. So I want to jump to Nainita next. You mentioned that you studied math, or you got a degree in math, I believe. What was your pivotal moment where you're just like, math is not it, like, or maybe you still use math? Maybe how does mathematics kind of come into your musician career?
No, I've always had a love for the beauty of numbers. I know it sounds very esoteric and fancy, but I was good at math at school, and I've carried that through. Yeah, everyone tells me whenever I mention maths, they say, "Oh, maths and music are related," and yes, they are. But I guess I use it in a different way in my music. There's a kind of an equilibrium to the way I construct music, and a balance to it. And then there's this side of me that's really into slightly OCD and precision and accuracy and all of that. And then of course being a tech geek head as a teenager, I loved computers, and so I was into software programming and coding and that kind of thing. But composing was not. I guess I had it never even crossed my radar to be a composer. As a child, I loved music. I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be Barbara Streisand, when I was 10 years old. And I wanted to be a singer and have my own bands. And at school, I learned the piano and the violin and the guitar, and I learned Indian classical instruments, and it consumed me. And then I loved film as well. But I guess having been brought up in a very not orthodox upbringing, but my parents are very liberated and tolerant and all of that, being brought up in London. But I always felt that I could, because I don't have a formal training in music, I felt that it wasn't for me, that it wasn't a profession that I could ever realize, that dream of mine, because I didn't have any female role models. I thought it was old white men were composers. Though I loved the music of Ennio Morricone and John Williams and John Barry and these French film composers like Michel Legrand, and these amazing influences. So I did a degree in maths as a kind of a 5-year backup plan. I thought, if I don't make it in music or film, I can always fall back on my maths degree. No disservice to accountants and actuaries and lawyers and all of that. So I did my degree, but I did a thesis in the wave equation, which is really geeky. And by doing that, I got onto a postgraduate diploma in postgraduate course in music technology. I did everything I could to steer my career and education towards music and sound. And then I applied for the National Film and Television School, because I loved film, and I got accepted on a full scholarship. And so I studied sound, and that gave me the one thing that I came away with working as a sound designer is that it taught me about the politics of working in huge teams in post-production, and it gave me a real grounding in audio and the place of sound and music within the whole scope of a movie. And I got about as far as I could. After a couple of years, I was working on big movies at Pinewood Studios and Shepton, all the big film studios in the UK. And I thought, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I thought, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 40 years old. My career isn't going to progress. I've done it all. I've done dialogue editing, sound design, Foley's. I worked as a Foley artist. I had so much experience, and I remember getting and then I digressed, and I went to I became an assistant music engineer. I wanted to get into the music industry, so I ended up being Peter Gabriel's music engineer, assistant music engineer, and that taught me so much about how to work with musicians and the psychology of getting the best out of a musician when you're working with world's greatest producers and engineers and artists, and that was amazing. And I thought, I want to be a composer. I don't want to work on other people's music. I want to work on my own music. And I got the phone call, this epiphany moment. I got a phone call offering me to do the sound design on a Kate Blanchett movie, Elizabeth, which was, a long time ago. And I said to the supervising sound designer, I said, I'm sorry, I can't take this job on. It was huge amounts of money, great stable job for 6 months work. As a freelancer, you want that stability and money. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm a composer. And it took a lot of courage to say that no one had paid me money to write a piece of music. I said, I'm a composer. I thought, wow, I'm cocky, and I put down the phone and I thought, oh my God, now what do I do? I've got no money, no work. And so I sent off 100 show reels to 100 different companies in this directory. And I got a reply from 2 companies. And I had a meeting, and I got the job to write the music for an ad for, say, Barclays Bank, and another company offered me the job to do the sound effects and music for a video game, and that launched my career.
Amazing! Wow. I want to turn it over to Sophia next, because you mentioned that you've been wanting to do this since you were 18, that you went to school for it, this is something you've driven for, but you're also doing a recording artist career on the side as Drum and Lace, and now you've kind of merged the 2 careers together. So I was just curious, at what point did you make that decision that you're just like, I'm going to be a composer, but I also want to be this kind of performing artist? How does that help me, and how do you balance these kind of 2 personas?
Yeah, it's interesting because as I've been listening to these, awesome experiences and stories, I really feel like I originally went to music college in Boston. I went to Berklee, and I originally went there to be a vocalist. So I wanted to be, like the next Janis Joplin or whatever. And I tell this story all the time. And I got there and realized that, the people that go to Berklee for as vocalists are just so talented. And I just the one thing that I was always missing is that, like, I just didn't have that, like, front woman energy. And, like, people will be like, no, but you do, but it's like, not at that level. So when I was at Berklee, I was like, well, what else can I study? And then I was like, well, I love film music, but as both, other wonderful panelists have mentioned, it's just like, without having known a woman to score a film that I knew, like, how was I supposed to know that that was something that, like, I wanted to do? So it essentially was one of those, like, well, my parents are paying so much money and I'm so far from home, I might as well, like, study something that I like. So that was kind of how I got into film scoring to begin with. When I graduated, I feel like I was very jaded and very unsure about about wanting to do film scoring, just because I think the way that it was taught, or just kind of like the vibe that I'd gotten, just wasn't really what I felt like would fit me. And looking back on it, I think it's just, I didn't have a voice. I didn't have a musical voice. I don't think I had anything to contribute musically. So I just didn't feel ready, which is why, like, I think all the detours happened. But fast forwarding a few years, I had been working as an in-house composer at a company after grad school, and I had some friends that were, fashion designers and other things, and they needed music. So I just kind of started offering to do that. And as I did that more and more, I realized that it was something that I really wanted to do. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to leave this job and start this new thing, I should come up with, like, a fun name to do it under. So that's how the name Drum and Lace came about. And to be honest, at first, Drum and Lace was supposed to be kind of like a composition for, like, more like specialized, like, niche fashion, stuff like that. And then I put out an EP, like, just randomly, of music that I had. And then all of a sudden people were like, oh, are you going to start performing? Are you going to put out more music? And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, so now this is happening. And kind of, long story short, I feel like if I hadn't gone through the steps of kind of creating a sound for my artist project as Drum and Lace, I don't think I would be doing as well on the scoring side, because I get hired now to do what Drum and Lace sounds like. So, I think when I was like 23 or 22, graduating from college, even if I wanted to do film scoring, I just didn't have that voice yet. So, don't regret any of the steps. And I feel like right now it's a really nice balance. And the artist side is nice because there's less pressure on it because the scoring stuff has been going well, knock on wood. So, but I definitely feel like one informs the other, and the artist side is where I get to kind of like display my personality and who I am. And it's, it's very obvious. Like if anyone comes to me to score something that sounds like John Williams, it's obvious that they didn't take the time to see what is out there. But it's been great. It's been great to have both sides of things.
Wonderful. Amanda, you kind of have a similar story where I know you went to school to become a film composer. You also are in a band yourself. But what I find really incredible about you is that you have a very strong fire and drive to kind of network and get yourself out there. Because I've seen you out in public, at festivals and working the room, so to speak. So on the same topic, I'm always curious to hear that moment where you're like, this is my moment. I'm going to be a film composer and I'm going to pursue this. But then also what kind of steps you took to make sure you stayed on that path and you didn't derail, because you seem very, very driven in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I think just throughout my life, I just become really hyper focused on certain things. And so, initially after I graduated 2010 and moved to Los Angeles, I was like very hyper focused on like band and performing. And so it was like this obsession. And I think we all probably have this similar drive. And it's just like every waking thought is just about what I'm working on. And so, so from like 2010 to 2014, it was like, just like every day, like, what can I do? Like, what can I write? Who should I open for? It was just like hundreds of emails a day and like hours of practicing every day, just like writing all the time. And then in the beginning, I intentionally only did like part-time jobs, like odd jobs, like, admin stuff, real estate stuff, like as an assistant, nothing really kind of creating something, it was always like the focus was like, I need as much time as possible for my art. And then everything else is just like supplemental, like it'll cover the rent or something like that. And so, I just made sure my expenses were super low in the beginning, and I was just like hyper focused on that. And so, so for that 4 to 5 year span, it was like, just kind of grinding. And my band's called The Anti-Job, and it was really fun. And we did a bunch of tours of Montreal and Deer Hook, just like a lot of fun, colorful, just like rock bands. KO Dot's another one of them. But yeah, after kind of grinding my gears in LA for a while, I was like, okay, I feel like I need to do something else because I felt like it was kind of just a pretty intense experience of just like pouring like 1,000% every single day. And then the gains are so incremental in the band world. It's like very challenging. And so, once I kind of made that decision to start doing film scoring, and I feel like, just the nature of being in LA and a lot of friends are directors or producers. And at the time we're doing a lot of short form content, like podcasts or web series, they're always needing music. And so I was able to create that stuff, and it was really, fulfilling. And so, but I recognized at the time I needed kind of more fundamentals. So I took some online classes with Berklee College of Music around 2014, 2015, like specific to film scoring, and some more orchestration classes, and really kind of understanding just like how to load instrument libraries and how to really use Logic for this sort of thing. And so, and then once I did that, it was, it was pretty incredible. Just tapped into like the Berklee network and did internships with like Hans Zimmer, Henry Jackman, and then was like hired at John Powell Studios, like a music production assistant, kind of on call. And, then I kind of just poured myself 1,000% into film scoring. I just did that same like band hustle energy into like film scoring. And it was just like way more fluid. It was literally the same kind of formula, but I feel like the talent pool for composers is it's such a very specific skill set, and it's a lot smaller. And so it was just easier to kind of apply that same kind of annoying thing, like, hey, listen to my demo sort of thing, like get me on the radio, being like, oh, hey, I'm a composer. It's like the same sort of energy, hustle energy, I guess. And it worked really, really well. And I just, let the whole world know it's like, I'm a composer, and just, just tell everyone over and over again, I'm a composer. And then, I'm working on such small things in the beginning, and then would just create a reel. And then whenever I was really proud of something, like update my reel, even if it was something, no one will ever see. Just keep updating. And then in 2016, 16, I think. Oh yeah, I got the opportunity to work at Lionsgate in their television music department. And that was pretty interesting because, you know, I had kind of made like a pact with myself that I would never work a full-time job. and and so I always have to be part-time to give space for my music. But then my mom was like, no, you're poor in LA, you should do something. So I decided to take the position, and you know, I got that position because I became friends with Henry Jackman's manager, and she was like always kind of keeping opportunities available to me. And so I was just kind of keeping in touch with people in different spaces like throughout the journey, you know. And so I got the gig, and they really wanted someone that was like a musical person. It was like a TV music coordinator. It's like A&R role, you know. I was responsible for like hiring composers, music supervisors, music editors. So, you know, I went from being kind of just like on the artist side to all of a sudden being at like the corporate studio side. And so, and being a gatekeeper, so to speak, which was really intense and crazy. But I loved it because that role was, you know, A&R, and I was like able to go to shows, like I'd get label invites to go to shows all the time. And it was just really fun sourcing talent for TV shows and kind of working in tandem with music supervisors, you know, to kind of license artists or, you know, find the next great composer for a TV show. And so that experience, like working at Lionsgate, you know, it's something I never thought I would do, you know, work in a corporate setting. But that really kind of helped orient my understanding of just how the industry works, you know, at this time. I feel like the culture is always shifting, but I feel like I have a really good handle on it right now. And so that kind of just like, you know, changed the way I thought about things. And it was like a huge paradigm shift. And so, so I did that for 2 years, and then, you know, just like met as many people as possible. And what was really great about that role is that, you know, my supervisor, Russell Zeker, he was always very, very supportive and understood that I always was, you know, my goal was to be an artist and that my time there wasn't going to be there forever, you know. So I spent 2 years there just like learning everything I could about just television music, and then kind of, you know, talking with the film music people as much as possible, just understanding the nuts and bolts of it all, everything from like budgets to just like, you know, working with EPs and showrunners and managing expectations and just really just how it works on the other side. It was really intense and amazing. And then I just saved like crazy, saved. And then 2 years later, I took the leap. I had the opportunity to do my first feature film. And then it was worth it. It was called One Angry Black Man. It was like an indie film. It was great. But I guess prior to that, you know, the stuff I had worked on at Lionsgate was really successful. I worked on a lot of soundtracks. And so I was able to like meet Lena Waithe, she's like responsible for this pilot that I worked on called 20s. So right before I left Lionsgate, I was at this award show. It was like the NAACP Image Awards, and it's like a nominee luncheon. So it was like a room where it was like a great networking space. And, you know, I've never been afraid of just going up to people and just telling people what's up and just like letting them know what my intentions are. Like, I'm a composer, I want to work with you. And, but like, you know, connecting on an authentic level. And so we exchanged contact information, and I finished that feature. I quit my job at Lionsgate. I was kind of just like taking a leap, and then it took 6 months to get a meeting with her manager. So it was kind of like a terrifying year, just like, oh, what's going to happen? But, and then a couple of weeks later, they hired me on the pilot, and then it wasn't picked up at TBS. And then it was like kind of a crazy ride. I'll try to be brief. I know this is taking a long time. And then, so I just had this one pilot that hadn't been picked up yet. And then I went to Sundance on a whim at the top of 2019, just last minute, and I did it all wrong. And I just stayed in Salt Lake City. I rented a car, and it was icy. And so I ended up just crashing with friends in Park City. And, you know, I just kept telling everyone there, and I would just wiggle my way into parties and stuff like that. And I just didn't have anything there at all, except for this pilot that hadn't been picked up yet. And I just told everyone, I was like, I have this pilot. I did this pilot. I worked with Lena Waithe. She's so cool. And then I happened to meet like Sujata Day, who worked together on a feature like later that year. And then I happened to meet like Diane Davis, like who was like a showrunner, like director for a Black Lady sketch show. So right when I got back to LA, after going to Sundance like on a whim, it was like literally 2 days before, I was just like, I'm broke, I'm just gonna do this. And, you know, and it was really fruitful just taking that risk. And getting back to LA was just kind of catching up with everyone I had met at Sundance. And then I was hired on a Black Lady sketch show, did the full season 1, and then after that 20s just picked up for a full season, and then after that did like Apple TV show, then after that it was like I worked with Ava DuVernay, and it was a full series of like an hour-long drama, and then I did this thing for Nike, and it was just like really fluid and really amazing. So 2019 was just kind of like this awesome year of just like payoff of just taking risks and just, you know, putting that intention out there. And then since then, it's just been incredible, and I've been crazy busy, and I'm super grateful.
That's amazing. One of the things that I really want to take away from that is the ability to network, because not every composer has that ability to work a room. But I will say that Nine to Desai can work a room. Like, I have not witnessed somebody like talk to everybody in the room, come away with fast friends, make connections, and then just gain all this new information. So Nainita, like, were you always a social child? Is this like in your nature to just be so open and chatty with people?
Absolutely not, Chandler. I am an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert. I don't know, but I was a shy wallflower. And I think what drove me out of the studio environment was the fact that I needed to put food on the table and pay for the roof over my head. I thought it was all about just doing the work and just writing music, and I was honing my craft, and I'd get a job and I'd work on it for 3 months, and I was consumed by the project, and then I would finish the project and think, okay, now what? I haven't got any work. And it took me quite a few years to realize that I had to find a way of balancing the two, which is not easy, because one day, you know, you put your creative head on, and then you have to put your business head on, and the two don't really work together. And so I started going to festivals, and and when I took that leap of actually getting out there and networking, and I know it sounds like a real cliche where people say you need to network and get to know people in the industry, but it's not easy when it's not your natural default mode to you know, you stand at you're getting lucky enough to get invited to a cocktail drinks or something, or a special preview of a movie, and then you stand there with you stand there, and it's like you're a social pariah. What do you do? I'm a composer. Okay, and people walk away, and you have this 6 foot circle around you. Oh God, you're the composer in the room. I don't know how to relate to you. And so I realized that I needed to learn to speak the language of film. And I don't speak about myself. I don't talk about music. I talk about films and the industry and the business, and you know, I'll go to film festivals and say, people will say, here's my card, you know, are you a film producer? I thought, no, I'm a composer. Oh, right, that's different. And then that's my way in, you know, just talking about filmmaking, and which you know, you learn to speak the language of film. And when I'm writing scores, I don't talk about music. I actually talk about the story and the tone and the characters, and you know, that's my way into writing a score. So yeah, I get out there, and I know hustle is a horrible word, but I don't like to see myself as a hustler. But I just love the people. I find that filmmakers are so. When people say, "What do you do?" You work in the music industry. I said, "No, I work in the film industry, or the film and TV industry, because I see myself as a collaborator and a person who deals with the language of film, and I love." Creativity from filmmakers and editors, and you never know where your next job is going to come from. I worked on For Sama, and I got that in such a crazy way. I did a short half-an-hour documentary for someone for literally a few $100s about 10 years ago, and I worked with the sound designer, the dubbing mixer, and we got on really well, and it was just a tiny little gig. It didn't lead to anything. And then 10 years later, he remembered me, and he said, I'm working with a director who's wanting a composer. He put me together with him, and I ended up working on a BAFTA winning Oscar nominated film. You know, you just be nice and be friendly, and just not come across as being needy and desperate when you may well be. You know, you think, I need work, but but it's like I've found that projects come to me when I have this nonchalant sort of not like a, just having a like a non-needy kind of just being friendly with people and being interested and curious in them, and because you're naturally curious and love being with people, and I actually do enjoy meeting people now. I didn't when I started, but I really enjoy it now, and it gets me out of the house, and it's so nourishing as well. Just instead of working in this isolated environment where because you're solitary most of the time anyway. So when you're composing, so I just love finding an excuse to get out and travel. I love traveling, and I love going to festivals, and I love going to events, and it just broadens my horizons.
And on the topic of networking, I want to turn it over to Sophia because I'm curious. Film festivals are one thing where it seems like a natural fit, but have you found attending fashion shows, underground music shows, anything that, I know you and I have been to a number of events that are not related to film festivals. Do you find yourself making connections there, or that do you find value in networking in those spaces as well?
Yeah, I think I'm really impressed by Amanda and Nainita's festival networking, because I feel like I'm always that person that's like, oh, I should go, and then I'm like, oh no, I don't have anything there. And like, as much as I love talking to people and I feel like I'm super social, I'm really bad at selling myself. So it'll be that thing where I'll go and it'll be somebody I want to work with, and I'll be like, well, it's great to meet you, see you around, and then I like walk away and I'm like, damn it, I should have been like, I want to work, like, so it's always that kind of thing. So I feel like film festivals are always hard for me, but shows and other things have been great, because in a way it's like everyone at a music at a concert or at a multimedia event or whatever, everyone there isn't a film composer. So like when you say that that's what you do, there's kind of like this upper hand of being like, well, I'm the only film composer in the room, so it's like easier for people to remember, I guess. I don't know. But it's helped because even at like one event that we went to in Chinatown, that's the kind of event that like a music supervisor will go to, or that somebody that is writing a script and needs to get inspired by music goes to. So I think that having my artist project and meeting people at networking and events that aren't film related is helpful in more of like a kind of planting the seed kind of situation, where you're meeting writers and people that work on set and music supervisors that like the return on that isn't like immediate, but it'll be kind of like down the line. They'll be like, oh yeah, I saw this person at a musical showcase, and I think they would be perfect for this, which has happened in the past. So I think it's great. And also going back to something Amanda said, I think it's so important, like what I've learned from kind of being an artist, and also my husband and often co-composer Ian was in a band, is that to be, I think, a successful creator or artist in general, you just have to have that, you just need to be able to hang. You need to be able to like hang out with people and shoot the shit, and just kind of like the environment that you get to know when you're kind of like in a band or in a music setting. Because we do all work on our own in film, and I think it's really important to have kind of like that social inkling. But yeah, I think it's definitely helpful to meet people at events that aren't just film stuff. And I say that to people who ask me how to get into scoring. I'm like, don't just go to film composer events, for the love of God. They're great, but like, don't just go to those.
Well, speaking of film composer events, I was going to ask Raphael, because I think, you're the newest kind of player on the scene, so to speak. When I was looking at your IMDb, it seemed you have credits starting around 2017. So you're like the freshest face on this panel, so to speak. So how does it feel to be the new kid in school? And have you had a chance to network with any of the kind of film composing community and kind of get to know this world a little bit?
Well, firstly, it took me a while to accept, this awkward path. I mean, I spent 13 years in advertising and in the tech world full time, not really having, much time to dedicate to music, although I would, but I would not put anything out there. I would never even dare to send one email, saying, I also do this and I also happen to make, I'm trying, it was so hard for me to, and even after I took the leap, it was hard for me to accept this, this really weird route that I took, because I don't know. I used to tell myself that I would have to work, twice harder to prove myself, because, it felt that I didn't have, initially what it takes to look and sound like a composer. So I practiced a lot. As Amanda mentioned, just practice. I wrote so much, hours, night and days, and then sent so many emails. And also the other aspect of my life is that I've been moving around a lot to, I live in Paris, London, San Francisco, and now I'm in New York. And, I've never lived in LA, although I would do a lot of back and forth when I was in San Francisco. But so in addition to, having this non-traditional journey, I was not necessarily at the right place, to meet the people, to go to the right events and stuff. So I would say that, and I think that there was a question on the chat about this, so I'm happy to answer that. The online aspect of hustling, it worked for me. I didn't have much opportunities to meet the people because I didn't have the background, because I literally didn't know anyone when I started. And I just had me and my music, basically, and maybe some skills that I got from my time in tech and advertising. When I worked with so many clients, I knew how to present myself. I knew what would do a good email and a bad email. I knew how to present myself. So I think that helped a lot in that regard. But I did a lot of hustling online, and I met great people online that I then, afterwards met offline in person in LA or in London or even in Paris, but and now in New York. But yeah, it was an addition of different, layers of, okay, this is not traditional, that made, the thing difficult for me, at least to feel that I was legitimate in the industry. But then, I also think that some people believed in me very early on, and that is priceless. Some people who saw that I had no credits, but they just listened to my music and believed in me. And I think that was everything. And that is still everything. For example, the two agents who still work for me today, Steve and Sophie, who approached me years ago, very early on in my career as a full-time composer, and they hustled for me from the beginning because they believed in me, and they are the people who got, the people who produced Secrets of the Whales interested. And, they're in Manchester, they're not based in LA, and I felt so supported by them at so many levels. And I think that they're not necessarily big, but they believed in me and they hustled so hard for me that it ended up paying out. And the people at Red Rock Films that produced the series remembered me a year after and remembered my work, and that's how I got the gig. But I've never met them offline, and also COVID happened, so I still haven't met them, unfortunately. So yeah.
You bring up a great point about somebody championing you and kind of lifting you up. And I'm curious if the other panelists have somebody like that, whether it was a mentor or someone that kind of kept you driving. Do you feel like you had a support system, or were you kind of on your own in making this career happen? And we can start with Amanda.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cheesy, but my husband is very supportive. He's also we've been on this musical journey together. We play in the band together, and then it's the same band from before, and now he does a lot of percussion on my scores. He's a drummer. But I mean, yeah, I think you have to have that fire inside of you and that obsession that's going to be number one. It's going to be rooting for you, just yourself, this internal voice that you hear. every day that's just like, you can do it, keep going. And if you have this huge list in front of you, you're just like, just do one more thing. And then you're like, you got it, just three more things. Anyone can do three of anything. Just keep going, just keep chipping away at stuff. And, you just have to just keep encouraging yourself if you don't have that support system. But, it took my parents a long time to get on board with what I was doing because everyone in my family is like STEM people. And my brother was like a neuroscience major. And I initially was going to study chemistry and then I abandoned it and did music. And then I did this crazy career in LA where I was just like couch surfing and only working part-time jobs like on purpose, which was like driving my family nuts. And so, you just have to surround yourself with people that really support you and continue to do so. Like what I really enjoy about I have a manager and an agent, like they're totally on board with like my vision of like what I envision for myself. And so it's like, I feel like when you kind of build a team or even just like without the team, just like the people that you surround yourself with, they need to make sure that they're on board with your vision. And that could be narcissistic and weird, but it's really important to just have people that are always rooting for you and you're rooting for your friends. And this is really, really strong and amazing network that's just like, we can do it. We believe in the impossible. And could take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. Just like have that group around you of just people that just really, really, really believe in you. And then it's kind of like this like self-actualizing thing, which is really, really cool. And then everyone else gets on board afterwards. They're like, oh, you did it. Congrats. Oh, that's so great. Oh, good job. So, and then that's cool. I love the support of my family, that's really awesome. And it feels really good to like make them happy and proud. But I think in those like formative years, it's really important to just have like the ride or die people. And that could just be you, just like your internal self voice that's just like telling you to wake up early and start writing,
Yeah. Sophia, do you have someone like this in your life?
I mean, my husband as well. It sounds stupid, but yeah, I feel like the first, I'm not gonna lie, like the first, I've been out here for 7 years, and the first like 5 years were very rough. I think it's just if you come from not having, you move to LA, you don't have any connections, like you don't have any sort of like I hadn't gone and interned with a bigger composer, and like there was all these steps that I felt like were limiting what I was doing, or kind of like felt like there was like gatekeepers like left and right being like, no, you can't go this way, you can't go that way. And I mean, Ian's been fantastic, just even at like listening me go on and on about like, maybe I try this and maybe I try that. And like everyone's been mentioning, I mean, the hustle is, and the word, it has the connotations that it has, but like the drive and the hustle is really what you need, I only got an agent that I love like a year and a half ago, but I had gotten Dickinson without an agent and somehow was still having a hard time finding an agent because it hadn't come out yet. And and I don't know whether that's because of not having had been an assistant to a composer, or not having a ton of credits that were on IMDb, at least, because as I'm sure all of us have done, like hundreds of like short films and things that don't end up on IMDb. So I feel like Ian was there the whole time to help, and then of course a lot of it was me being like, I feel great and I got this and I know what I'm going to do. And then, like full months of being like, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing with myself? And, the drive ultimately, like if you know that you want to do something, or you feel like this is what you're maybe meant to do. Thankfully that kept going. And now I love my agent, Becca. We've been working together, since July 2019. And it's just been so nice because she just believes, she was the only agent of like the 8 agents that I met with that actually listened to my music and like resonated with that, which was so important. And she's just kind of been really helpful. If I'm having a bad day or whatever, I can text her and be like, oh, and she'll actually text back. So that's like a huge person to have in my corner. On my music side now, that's where I'm figuring stuff out, because I'm totally DIY. So and things have newly happened, and then I get cold feet just because it doesn't feel right. And I'm sure everyone on this panel can talk about how like it's so hard when like you're trying to trust someone with like the thing that you love to do the most. So yeah, but I'm grateful for Ian and for my agent at the moment, and for the community, to be honest.
While we're on you, Sophia, actually, I want to ask this question that just popped up. It says, for Sophia, how were you able to land a job for Dickinson without an agent?
That is a very good question. So, so I think, you know, of course, a lot of this is speculative because I feel like I've gotten hints from people of how it may have happened, but essentially, I think when they were looking for somebody for Dickinson, they were hoping to find somebody who had a musical sensibility that was electronic, obviously, but also that could create a score that sounded like songs. And I think they were also looking for a woman, which I appreciate over at Apple. And two people have mentioned to me that they knew one of the heads at Apple of music at Apple TV, and they mentioned me to them. One of which being a member of the Echo Society that I'd participated and performed with, who put in a good word for me, and then another person being somebody that works at a publishing company, working with artists. So I think they both put in a good word, and then yeah, it just kind of happened by word of mouth, and then Ian was brought in, and I don't know, it just kind of happened organically, and I think they saw the potential, and I'd released music at that point, so they could hear what I had to offer, and I guess they must have liked it and totally took a chance. Like, you know, you talk about those moments where like people where you're essentially like kind of a nobody, and they're like, you know what, let's give you one of the first 4 Apple shows, like here you go, and you're like, what? So thankfully it worked out. We're working on season 3 right now, so it's been great. But thanks for the question. And yeah, it was a big moment of personal achievement to do that, so that was great.
Awesome. And I do want to get to some of these questions because we only have a couple minutes left of our hour. It's gone by so fast. Rafael, you kind of answered this earlier. The question is, if you don't live in a big metropolis like LA or London, do you think it's possible to get discovered by looking for opportunities online? So can you do your job remotely? And Nainita, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think you need to be in the kind of major hub, or can you be on the outskirts?
You know, I mean, one of the benefits of going through this pandemic is that suddenly the light bulb has come on with everyone, and they realize you can be based anywhere as long as you've got a strong internet broadband connection. I mean, I'm working on my dream job at the moment, and I doubt that, and it's based in LA, and I don't think I would have got it had had we been, you know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Suddenly the studio opened their eyes and said, you know what, we can employ composers from anywhere. It's just about the talent and getting the right talent and the music. So you don't have to be in a. It helps with the networking. I mean, I'm literally 20 minutes from Soho, and I love that. I love being able to hop into Soho, have a coffee with a director, and that is useful. But you can have a career, you can have a really successful career, especially now there's a mass exodus of composers that I know leaving London and moving out to the countryside, literally an hour, 2 hours away from the big hubs. So yeah, in short, you do not need to be based in a big epicenter anymore.
Would you suggest that if you don't live, I understand you can physically do the job outside of a metropolitan area, but would you suggest that they have to make the effort to go to these Sundance Film Festival, British, or the London film, whatever, you know, like, do you feel like that is a necessity, or can someone literally be in a cabin in the woods and keep this career going?
I think that you do need to travel. I think you need to spend some sort of intense period of time. You maybe like you go into a big city and you have meetings. I mean, you try and organize. Even myself, you know, even though I'm literally 20 minutes from the center of Soho in London, I tend not to travel that much. I arrange my meetings so that I'll go and meet 5 or 6 people in one day, and I will do that. Going to festivals, I think, is important. Going to conferences, like Sophia said, you know, going to events where there are no other composers there. That's a really smart thing to do. I used to go to a documentary festival in the UK. And I was the only composer in the room. I thought, oh my God, it's just like I'm in heaven. I had the pick of the crop of filmmakers because I was like this weird anomaly that you're a composer. Oh, this is unusual. Or you go to film industry conferences where there are nothing but a room of execs and a 2 day conference, a room of execs and broadcasters, and I'm a composer. They've never heard of that, happening. And now, of course, it's cottoned on, and people are going to these festivals. So I'm no longer the unique person in the room, but it's okay. I think you just be creative and smart with the way that you network. I think it's important to have. There's nothing like face-to-face contact with people. That is super important.
Moving on with some of these questions, because I do want to get through them. The question is, it's like a statement. I've worked on a few shorts, a feature doc, and also write a bit of library music. I also started producing an independent artist. At what point do you find an agent, and do you have to wait for them to come to you? And I'll start with Amanda. Let's see, what are your thoughts on the agent question?
So I guess for me, and I'm sure everyone else on this panel, like a lot of the gigs that you get is from your own networking. So I think this might be kind of crazy, but having an agent and a manager is probably more aesthetic than anything in the beginning. And it just like looks cool, and it's just like, oh wow, good job, you're like signing with someone, even if they're not doing anything for you. It's just like, oh, you're with this person. So it's not essentially, you really have to be your own manager / agent like for a good while, even when you first get one, because it takes time for them to really start like shopping you, and people getting that rhythm of just that, like, studios understanding how their agent will reach out to them and pitch you and stuff like that. But I think you need to get to a point where they're kind of like helping you, like with, for example, I'm with like UTA and they have like an in-house lawyer. That's like really beneficial for me because it's like, I don't have to worry about lawyer expense, and it's just like great having like an agent there. Then I also have a manager because he has his own contacts and I have my own contacts. So I've chosen to like, take the hit with those percentages for the sake of just like all three of us working really intensely. And that's kind of like my strategy for like the next couple of years, maybe forever. So yeah, you don't really need one. It's really, you'll feel at that moment where you kind of hit this critical mass where it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy. And it's just nice having someone kind of do those negotiations for you. You don't have to be that person. It's just like, oh, I'm worth so much more, and let's talk about music and creative. So it's kind of just nice to have that buffer. But you'll know when you need one, and it's when you're like crazy busy, or if you have like a handful of projects under your belt, and you're just like, I don't know, it's like a weird dance. I think that's like the most honest thing I can say about it. It's just like, it's good to have from an aesthetic perspective, and then the studios think you're substantiated, but at the same time, recognize that you have to do a lot of the work yourself to get gigs. And then it becomes a thing where it's like everyone's working in tandem, and it's awesome. It takes time. It takes a couple of years to get the team like pretty solid.
Absolutely. One of the questions is kind of answered on the panel, which is really interesting. They said, as the film composition continues to become more competitive, do you think that developing yourself as an artist away from the screen is the future way of progressing in the industry for emerging film composers to interest film directors and producers? And obviously we have Amanda and Sophia who have this kind of recording artist kind of background / career that is leading them in. And then we have Nainita and Rafael who don't have that, but they also are. So it's just like, and I feel like the panel answers the question, which is yes and no. Like, yes, it works for some people, and no, it's not necessary for some people. Does anybody have any thoughts reflecting on that? Do you feel that becoming more of an emerging artist / recording artist is a necessity, or is it only if you find the drive to create a unique sound like that? We can start with Rafael or Nainita.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that I mean, I think it's gonna come naturally if you want to do it. I've never felt that I would be, I don't know if it's because I would not be good at it, or if I just never really felt the drive for it. And also because I was so, obsessed with films and film music, and all my influences from when I was a kid until now have been film composers, are, the late Romantic era classical music with all these composers in Russia who started composing highly romantic pieces that sounded really cinematic, that sounded very cinematic, and they kind of invented this genre, and so it was very much in me from the beginning, and I think I've always felt like it was not for me and that other people would do it much better than me. So I don't know, to me it's a very natural thing that you feel in you.
Yeah, I'm a jobbing composer. I always have been a jobbing composer in that I serve the film, I serve the director's vision. And so if they want me to write a score that's like John Williams, I will do that. If they want me to write a score like Hans Zimmer or something indie like Emile Mosseri, or, that I can turn my hand to that. But, and so I always felt that I never truly found my own unique identity and my own unique voice. And I think having analyzed the way that many composers' routes, there are three kinds of routes. One is to be an indie artist, where you have established yourself as an indie artist and you have your own unique voice. And then, like Sophia, people come to you because of your voice and your sound, and that is a great way. But it's hard work establishing yourself as an artist in the first right, and then transitioning into doing that. You've got lots of strings to your bow being an artist in your own right, and then because you get so much creative satisfaction out of it because you're writing music for yourself, and then you're turning your sound to other people's projects, and that people coming to you for your sound, that is a great way. And then there's the school of writing music for 150 short films and working through, doing a degree in music and working with student filmmakers and in that kind of route, which is the kind of route that I took really. And then assisting other composers, some of you, Amanda, you've done it, you've worked with the great Hollywood composers and becoming an assistant composer, writing additional music, coming up through that school, which is so seems like a really strong, prevalent route in LA, but not so much in the UK. We can't. That's why I've never assisted a composer. I never had any mentors. I just and so I think, and now coming full circle, I'm actually developing writing my first album and doing my own thing, because I'm a late developer. It's taken me 20 years for me to find my sound, and so I'm finally sort of becoming, writing for film and TV is my bread and butter, but I'm finding it incredibly nourishing writing music for myself, and doing that in reverse now.
One of the questions that came through is someone who needs advice as a songwriter who's primarily a lyricist and would be collaborating with composers on projects that need custom songs. So do you have any advice of lyricists approaching you or being a co-songwriter on projects? Have you been approached for that kind of work? Are you interested in that kind of work? We can start with Sophia.
So that's interesting. So my first kind of foray into working, I don't know, that it's interesting because with Dickinson season 2, we were able to write a song that one of the cast members sang. And when we first were approached, or when, people mentioned that they wanted that to happen, we thought it was interesting. They wanted the composers to do it and not to hire out someone. I'm on a Netflix movie now where there's an aspect of the movie where there's music that's, essentially that they hired someone else to do a song specific for the movie and not ask us. So I think there's a lot of different scenarios at play of like how that happens. But I mean, I'm guessing this is more specifically of how we would bring on somebody to write lyrics on something that we're writing for the score, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I would assume that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it takes it has to come from kind of like the director or from kind of higher up. Just because I know that in the past, whenever we've tried or whenever I've tried to do that, it's not always met with great approval, just because I think films can be so insular and so private, and there's so much now with the internet of people being afraid of things leaking and things getting kind of like outside of NDA land, that when you bring in the idea of bringing someone else in, it can often scare away people, especially if you're working on bigger films, if that makes any sense. So I think it needs to come kind of like at a higher level, the way that like I assume Eurovision did, where it's like it was very clear cut from the beginning that this was going to happen. And I am afraid also that like you have to have had some writing credits or like have something kind of to your name to be able to be included in that kind of thing. Not to say that it wouldn't happen, but I just think that yeah. Does that make any sense? It's
Well,
an interesting question.
yeah, and I think one thing that should be understood is that often, I don't know if you've had the experience yourselves as composers, but in my experience, is lyrics for songs that are heard, especially in television film, are written by the writers, the writing staff. They're not working with lyricists necessarily. So I would say 80% of the projects that I've been a part of, the lyrics are actually coming from the writer's room or from the director directly. When the lyricists are involved, it's often with a songwriting duo that are brought in together because they want that song style, like the Lopez's and Pasek and Paul and whatever, they want that particular sound. Does anybody else have, this is the last question, by the way. So if you have anything else that you want to add about working with songwriters.
Yeah, so I actually recently had an opportunity to do like a pilot for ABC. And typically the composer is like separate from a songwriter, like Sophia mentioned. If you do a song or music producer, there's like a separate budget for that sort of thing. But for this sort of scenario, they were like, oh, if you end up, creating a main title, we'll, renegotiate certain things and then we'll add that to your contract. And so for this particular main title, they wanted lyrics. And it was 5 seconds and it was really, really short. And ABC, music people were like, we're happy to help you find a demo vocalist. We're happy to help you find any lyricists, anyone you want to work with. Just let us know. And, I'm just so used to kind of just like leaning into my own music community and just like going to people that I know can like turn out stuff like crazy fast and really quality work. So, I sourced like a demo, and it was a union show. So, I sourced a demo vocalist and then ABC did the paperwork and paid for that singer. And then I wrote the lyrics, but then my mom is actually like an aspiring songwriter. So this is kind of like a funny sort of weird thing. And the vibe was like a Mary J. Blige thing. And so that's kind of like more of her generation, and kind of like she would know kind of how to, I don't know, like the syntax and like the vernacular that would be used in like a Mary J. Blige song is like very specific to her generation. And so I was just like on a whim, I was just like, feel free to send me anything. I'm just writing this. I'll probably get to it at like 1 a.m. or something like that. And so she sent me like 20 ideas. And, I used like for the first half of the song, I used like my lyrics and I just swapped in like the second half of hers. And I gave the studio like 5 different options. But one of them was a mixture of like mine and hers. And they selected the one that was like a mixture of like mine and hers. But this is like a weird example of just like a scenario where it was really helpful to have a lyricist, because I've never ever gotten a main title ever. And so it was kind of nice to have like that outside input. And I know it's weird that's my mom, but I'm just being like transparent about it. But I probably will reach out to, more lyricists to kind of, I think it's really great to collaborate. And I have had opportunities to kind of be a bit of an influence, whether it's like licensing songs on things or bringing in certain talent. And so whenever that happens, I'm always happy to like draw my community. And so I don't know many lyricists, and I would love to know more. And so, yeah, I think the opportunity could arise again. And I think it's kind of like a one of them blue moon sort of thing, but you just never know. I think it could happen.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank everybody for participating in this panel. For those of you that ask questions about agents, we do have a panel of agents that I believe was posted in the chat. So go and look back on the YouTube channel for the Alliance for Women Film Composers. You can see a group of agents talking about representation. We'll be talking with the Netflix music creatives. We'll be moderating a panel with composers. Nainita will be on that panel next week. So tune in next week if you want to hear more about TV production timelines and everything like that. And before I let you all go, why don't you give a shout out of social media channels of where people can find you? If anybody wants to connect with you on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, we'll start with Sophia.
Yes, of course, because I'm the one that has thousands of different outlets. So I'm on Instagram a lot, and it's just at Drum and Lace, all spelled out. I am also on Twitter and only rant occasionally, so you can find me on there. I am also on YouTube, and it's Drum and Lace, but it's YouTube/Drum Lace. And I'm very present on social media. So I say this begrudgingly because I have zero time right now, but if anyone has any follow-up questions, you can always ask them on there. So, and thanks for having me. This has been great.
Pleasure. Nainita, where can people find you?
I'm pretty present on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. More Twitter and Facebook, and at Nainita Desai. So I'm not difficult to find. And like Sophia said, if anyone's got any questions, happy to answer them with DMs on social media. And thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure being with this amazing, talented sisterhood of composers. Fantastic talent here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Raphael, where can people find you?
Mainly on Instagram, Raphael Thibault, and a little bit on Twitter too, but yeah, mostly Instagram. And same, I will take any DM questions on Instagram if needed.
And Amanda?
So yeah, Instagram I think is probably the main thing I'm on, and it's Amanda Composer. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any other questions.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again so much for doing this. I greatly appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you all in person in the future very soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.